Good afternoon. I'm Monika Gul. The provincial elections are set to happen April 19th. Joining me by telephone to discuss some northern issues is leader of the Manitoba Liberals, Rana Bokhari. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So diving in, you're fairly new in provincial politics. You don't necessarily have as much legislative experience. You're younger than the other leaders of the other parties. So I'm wondering, what would make you a better premier than the other leaders? What do you have to offer that the other options, the other leaders can't?
You know what? That's a great way to start this conversation. We get asked about it a lot, and I appreciate the fact that Manitobans are now realizing that those old school tactics and that old school top-down kind of premier or leadership has not benefited Manitobans, and I would almost say specifically northern Manitoba. At this point, what we bring to the table, and what I specifically bring to the table, is this idea and this belief that partnerships with municipalities, with the federal government, with our local Indigenous and Métis communities can get us much farther in life, because it also shows a level of respect between all the communities that we need to work together as all Manitobans to get us where we need to go. So I think it's just a very different approach to politics. We are seeing a generational shift across the country, and we're seeing that it's resonating with people across the country, and we saw it on a federal level because of that, because of this different approach to it. And so I think that it's an exciting time, and it's a great opportunity for all Manitobans with a Liberal government.
Okay. As you mentioned, there are many issues here in the north, and I think a big one for residents here in the north, specifically Thompson, is healthcare. Our challenges with healthcare are almost multiplied because of our distance from specialists and certain medical testing, which are only available in Winnipeg. I've heard of patients who've had to travel to Winnipeg, and then sometimes once they get there, they're told that an appointment is canceled or a doctor is unavailable, even after incurring costs of traveling, food, accommodation. So how would the Liberals improve healthcare for Northerners?
And I like the fact that you kind of touched on that point where, individuals they go through all the process. It's a very emotional time when you're dealing with any health crisis. It's emotional for the person. It's tiring for the families, and that needs to stop. And what we've already committed to, first step would be more funding to municipalities, and that's why we've taken that approach to commit that 1% new PST to all municipalities on a per capita basis, and that would include Thompson. What that allows municipalities to do is start to build that healthcare infrastructure. We are also committed to our mental health approach is funding psychologists and mental health care workers under Medicare, because that's another issue that I think a lot of northern Manitobans are feeling. We know that there's the heart disease, the diabetes, and all the other stuff, but we also recognize that 21st century mental health is leading to extremely high rates of suicide within those communities as well. So what we need to do as a community is recognize, number one, that more funding needs to go into healthcare in northern Manitoba. So there's not only specialties available out there, and I know that we talked a little bit about mental health, but that's another big component of that, because I think that, healthy body, healthy mind type of mentality, I think that's really important to do. But I think what we really need to do is recognize that the approach is working with these communities, in working with the people of Thompson and the leaders in Thompson to make sure that we are sitting around the table as partners and really honestly talking about what is required moving forward to benefit the health of those in Thompson and surrounding areas.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that has helped somewhat Northerners when they're getting their medical treatment in Winnipeg are facilities that provide accommodation at a reduced price when they're in Winnipeg. That way they have a place to stay, and it's a bit cheaper than, shelling out tons of money for a hotel. One of these sort of programs is a Port in the Storm, but I know there's others. But it's not perfect, and it's not easy to get into, for example, because it's usually full. Would the Manitoba Liberals look at helping fund another facility like this?
You know what? Yes, to that conversation, absolutely. So my door is 100% open for that. My biggest concern for that issue is that those locations that we're sending, people who are going through a very difficult time. I mean, if you're dealing with a health issue, you're coming to the city, and you end up in a place that may not be as suitable as required. So maybe the heating is not proper, or there's something in the building that's maybe not perfect. That's the biggest concern there. And the second, as you said, is making more of those locations available so people aren't waiting. And when they do come to the city of Winnipeg for a health concern, there is something safe and healthy available for them to be in. And I think that these are just basic kind of human issues. Nobody wants to see a family member ill and traveling all that way only to end up in a place that may not be suitable, and it may not even address their health concerns. But 100%, I think it's very important for everyone to recognize that is on our radar. We are paying attention to it. We do recognize the healthcare challenges that Northern Manitobans face, and we will and are committed to working in partnership with them to make sure those are addressed.
Mm-hmm. And so would that include then, I guess, bettering the facilities? As you mentioned, there's some problems with them. They don't even have heating. Would that include, I guess, improving those facilities, or how would it look for you guys to improve that situation?
We haven't released a policy on it, but I think the key is that we have to work together and deal with it. We can't just pretend that the issue is not there, and whatever needs to get done to resolve it needs to get done. These are issues that Manitobans deserve, right? Like, this is like no one's asking for above and beyond a reasonable request to have a place to stay when they come into the city for a health concern. So we're on it. We're paying attention to it. I'm really looking forward to having those conversations about what particularly that looks like with the different leaders. But we are committed to addressing those concerns. Mm-hmm. Northern Manitobans don't have to deal with that.
You mentioned earlier that one of the goals that you would want to do is, getting together on a table, working with other municipal leaders, etc. I know our municipal government here in Thompson has been lobbying an MRI. Would that be something that you guys would look into bringing to Thompson?
Yes, and it will absolutely be something that we're looking to bring for a few reasons. Number one, it's a necessity. Number two, it's the surrounding areas. Correct, right? I mean, you could easily call Thompson a hub of the surrounding communities. So we do need to make sure that those required facilities, such as MRIs and whatnot, are available. Again, this has been ignored for too long. It's been put on the back burner for too long. You have everyday Manitobans who really don't even care about politics. They just really care about their lives, as they should, and their own well-being. And they're being kind of, brushed aside. But these these are basic necessities for a community to function. So yes, it's on the table. Yes, I look forward to working in partnership with Council in Thompson to make sure that these concerns that have been front and center for a very long time do become addressed, like we address them now. Mm-hmm.
Moving into transportation, what are the Manitoba Liberals' plans for transportation? Because we have a lot of hurdles when it comes to getting around, not only within the north, but as well when we want to travel down south. Are there plans or policies you've looked at to make transportation more accessible and affordable?
Yes, you know what? It's about infrastructure, right? So number one, do we recognize that more dollars need to go into the pockets of Manitobans so they do have those extra dollars to pay for transportation? Yes, we recognize that. But I think even more important is the funding that's going to go into infrastructure for Northern Manitoba. We have some great candidates in the surrounding areas, and hopefully soon we'll have one in Thompson. But these are people that I'm encouraging local community members to go to and talk about these issues. For me to pretend that I know exactly what the people of Thompson are facing, it's just not factual. But I do rely on experts or people who do live in those areas to pass on those concerns to us so we can begin addressing them. But there will be funding going to infrastructure that would include transportation, that would include health care, that would include dealing with some of these MRI issues. It would include looking at the feasibility, actually, of all-weather roads. So there's a lot around transportation. So specifically, I don't want to go into the details about it, but I do want to just let Northern Manitobans know that we are taking transportation, again, very seriously. But those aren't unilateral decisions that we will make with communication and partnership with those communities.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned working in partnership with the federal government as well earlier. I know I know right now, for example, the NDP government is trying to get the federal government to commit to help funding an all-weather road network. Do you think you'd be able to get the federal government to commit to that?
You know what, I can't speak for the federal government, but what I can say, and I think that Manitobans are realizing this, that there is obviously there's a great relationship between our party and our federal party, and we are very aligned in our thinking about what Northern Manitobans need, and we are all together hoping and working towards addressing those issues. So, you know, and I can't commit for them or say anything for them, but I will say that in terms of a value system and in terms of what our vision for Northern Manitoba, I think we're very aligned with the federal party. So I do think that a Liberal provincial and a Liberal federal government, would be beneficial for Manitobans.
Mm-hmm. Food costs can get pretty high in the north, especially in isolated communities. And I know you guys have come out with a plan to address food security. You guys are committing to $25 million in the first year of the program. Can you give us some details on how the program would work and how it would keep money in the pockets of the people here in the north?
It would keep money in the pockets of people in the north by not having them have to spend $30 for a jug of milk. I mean, it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable that anyone in Northern Manitoba has to pay really anything more than what those in the city of Winnipeg are facing. And to be completely fair and honest, this is an issue that trickles down because you have people who are not able to afford healthy, nutritious food, be it fruits, vegetables, milk, those basic necessities. And, our program will allow people to not have to pay those crazy amounts of money for basic necessities of life. What that will actually do is it would probably reduce some of the health issues that those communities are facing. It'll probably reduce some of the transportation costs to getting to Manitoba that Northern Manitobans are facing. And above and beyond all of that, everyone deserves affordable food. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone deserves affordable food. To talk to or to expect that, a single mom, with 2 kids is going to be able to, on a very limited income, pay 50% of her income on food. I mean, it's horrible. You just can't have that. So I think a lot of these issues are just basic human necessities, and again, for far too long, they've been ignored. There's been a lot of chatter about them. People have talked about them, but we are committing to taking a leadership role in addressing them. And I think that it's not only good for Northern Manitoba, but it's also good for all of Manitobans to make sure that our entire community has food, has safe water, has housing.
Would would the savings be passed on to a retailer and then passed on to the consumer? Just because I know that there have been problems with previous food programs. I know the former federal government had one, and it turned out that the savings weren't being passed on to the people buying the product. So would that be something you guys are ensuring?
That would be one of the first things. The purpose of this program is to make sure, and the process of which we do that will be rolled out, but the goal is to make sure that individuals who are going into a store to buy food are getting it at a reasonable price. That's the goal of this program. Mm-hmm. For cheaper food, for reasonably priced basic necessities of food in the pockets of those individuals. So how that rolls out, we'll look forward to during the election to roll out the exact details of that. We're still, 2 months out, but just in terms of a goal, in terms of a vision, in terms of what the purpose of that is exactly that.
Mm-hmm. You've also come out with a plan to move to private delivery and public supply of beer, wine, and spirits. According to this plan, beer and wine would be potentially sold in supermarkets, general stores, etc. In a place like Thompson, where we do have some social problems, how would you ensure that the sale of alcohol continues to be done appropriately with this plan?
The purpose of that plan for the way we sell beer, wine, and spirits is to really, there's going to be, and this is the part that doesn't get really talked about, but our plan includes more funding going into social responsibility, education, addictions like help, because we're not going to be spending the money on advertising for ourselves. Right. So right now, as it stands, Manitoba Liquor, they have, and rightly so, they have a lot of funding going into advertising for themselves. And we're saying I would much rather have that dollar amount, which is a large dollar amount, directed into education, directed into addictions, directed into those real needs that you're speaking about. We recognize very much that this has to be done very responsibly. This has to be done with the safety of our communities in mind, and we believe that that will happen because, frankly, I would much rather have dollars going into addiction foundations to help those who are struggling, going into social responsibility education than anything else. So we're 100% with the people of Thompson in that. We're going to work really hard to make sure that those needs are being addressed. But it's on our radar, and we're not ignoring that at all. Mm-hmm. And it's a part of the plan.
Right. You guys have also come out with a few plans on housing. One is investing into the housing crisis on Northern Manitoba First Nations, and you've said even though it's not a federal even though it's a federal issue, that's something that you guys want to take on. And you guys are starting with $15 million yearly to improve the situation. Can you give details on the plan? How would it be decided where the money goes? Which First Nation reserves would be getting the funding?
Right. And again, that's something that those details of which get rolled out closer to the election. We're still, I would say, about 2.5 months out, but that is going to be detailed in our platform, and I look forward to sharing that with our northern communities. But the purpose of that and the goal of that and the message that the people of Thompson and surrounding areas should get from that is that we as a provincial government will not be ignoring them, regardless of what the feds do or don't do. We are committed to taking a leadership role in addressing these issues head on. We're committed to making sure that northern Manitobans know that they are a part of our province and they will not be treated like they're not, and they will not be ignored. So the purpose of that is really to start the conversation. Let's get moving on it. Let's take a leadership role on this. Let's start to address those housing issues that northern Manitobans are facing, and let's do it with or without the federal government. I will say this, though. I know for a fact that this federal government is also committed to making sure that those communities are taken care of. And I say this again, there's no better opportunity for Manitobans other than having a provincial Liberal government and a federal Liberal government that is has the same value systems and the same belief of the way we want to treat our northern Manitobans.
Another housing plan is freezing rent for 2 years. I'm sure it's welcome news to tenants, but landlords not so much. We do have quite a few people who rent out units here in Thompson. Some do it as their only income. It's their business, while some do it on the side. There are landlords in the province that are arguing that a freeze would make it harder for them to maintain property and do upgrades. They say that yearly increases go towards the infrastructure. Are you worried that a rent freeze, although it would keep money in the pockets of residents, would also maybe decrease the quality of the buildings that they're living in?
Yeah, you know what, and I appreciate that comment, and we've been, we just spent yesterday with some of the landlords as well, really talking about the way that we can make sure that does not happen. Now, I think the key for us and the key for those who have to pay out of their own pocket with very limited income, be it the low-income earners, be it those on social assistance, or even be it those our senior Manitobans up in northern Manitoba, for those families, that $5 or that $10 really does affect their bottom line. That's the difference between taking a cab to a doctor's appointment or not going at all. That's the difference between buying a jug of milk or not doing that at all. So these are very serious issues. And what those who are renting and those who are renters need to understand and recognize is that we are here to work with them. We're here to make sure that those concerns are dealt with. And I'm excited to see landlords and other people come to our table and have those conversations about how that can be done. But again, these answers won't come today. These are situations that once we are in government, and I'm looking forward to those days when we can sit around the table and say, this is the stuff that has to get done. How do we do it together?
Mm-hmm. Now, moving into education, there, at least as far as I haven't seen too many announcements or commitments to education.
No, not yet.
So do you guys have any plans with education, maybe specifically in the north? Because I know we do have some challenges that we face here with education. Do you have like a vision on where you would take it?
Yeah, you know what? We don't. I can't really go into too much detail of the plan because it's just not released yet. But what I will say is that there's a few things that we recognize, which one of them obviously is the difference between funding in northern areas versus funding everywhere else. We also recognize that education is probably one of the greatest economic drivers. I also recognize that our Indigenous population, our Métis population, is our greatest opportunity in this province if we recognize that, which the Manitoba Liberal Party does. So considering all those 3 points, northern Manitobans can be assured that our plan will address their needs. We're looking to see how we can empower, especially those young northern Manitobans, to get the education that they need, be it in trades, be it K-12, whatever it is. But again, these are issues that need to be immediately addressed. Early childhood education is also a key component to this plan. We need to make sure that we have young Northerners, young Northern Manitobans going into these schools at a young age and really starting quite young to keep up. We live in a very globalized world. Education is very competitive, and I'm committed to making sure that all Manitobans, regardless of where they are, have the ability to compete on local levels, but also national levels.
Mm-hmm. Now, here in the north, a concern is economic development, tourism, that kind of stuff. I know the Progressive Conservatives have promised that they would launch a program, Yes North, which is an initiative to promote strategic economic development and tourism. The NDP has introduced similar initiatives like Opportunities North. Do you guys have some sort of plan to diversify the economy and infrastructure here in the north?
Yes, and I won't go. I will say this: we have a group of we call our Northern Caucus actually. And not yet the individual who's running for us in Thompson, but that person would be included in this. We actually have empowered them to go to those surrounding areas and really have discussions about what that looks like. What does diversifying our northern economy looks like? But the key is that I'm committed to a plan. I do want to just hold off before we announce it until we give our candidates an opportunity to go through communities and have those discussions with them. But there has to be, for us to move forward as Manitobans, as a community, strategic investment that will grow the northern economies. We recognize that, and we do know that we need to make sure that more dollars are staying in the pockets of those individuals. So we want to keep more money in the pockets of Manitobans in the north. That will come through different plans. Some of it will be PST off certain goods. Some of it will be through something like rent freeze. Some of it will be through transportation and affordable housing. Some of it will be through our health care. But the purpose is there's a lot going on in just making sure the Manitobans have more dollars in their pocket. But the second part of it, too, just going back to the economic diversity part, I'm encouraging those in those communities up in northern Manitoba to make sure that you are talking to our candidates. Make sure that you're letting them know your ideas and your plans, and be innovative and be creative, and let's move this province forward. But they are your voice, and they're there to hear you, and they're there to bring that information to us so we can build policy around that.
On a similar note, a common feeling here in the north is that we're essentially forgotten. It feels as though the focus and investments are made in the south. That's where all the action, so to speak, happens, and that the needs of the northerners aren't addressed or met. So I'm just curious, what's your response to that? And, you kind of already touched upon it in your previous answer, but are you able to ensure that northerners that a Manitoba Liberal government is committed to addressing the needs that we have up here?
We are absolutely committed to addressing those needs, and I think the first step for me as a leader was to make sure that I had candidates in those areas who understood that was their job, to make sure that they were on the ground working with community members, working with small businesses, working with the educational facilities, working with their healthcare facilities, making sure that they were bringing that information to us, to me as a leader. I will never claim to know or have lived in northern Manitoba to know the day-to-day issues and the day-to-day struggles, but those candidates have. Secondly, it was a great experience for me to be out in Thompson a few weeks back. We were there for the day. It was a great experience, and I think I made my food announcement there. So I've already made it a point to come out and to make sure that I am hearing the issues up there. So you will not be ignored. You already haven't been ignored. I've made sure that I've had some funding for even our mental health issue, for everything that we've talked about. We've recognized that northern Manitobans need to be included in that conversation. So the Manitoba Liberal Party, you guys can be assured that we're not ignoring you, and we have already not ignored you.
Okay, and last question, as you touched upon, there isn't yet at least at this moment that we're interviewing right now, there isn't yet a candidate here in Thompson for the Manitoba Liberals. Will there be a candidate? Anyone in mind? Is there anything you can tell us about that?
I can't tell you anything about that except that there will be a great candidate out there. I can assure you that there will be somebody who's going to advocate for you. I can assure you that there's someone that will be accessible, and it will be someone who will fight me for your cause. So I think that 21st century politics has to be a bit more grassroots, much more localized. And again, I encourage individuals to take the time to get to know your candidates. I'm not sure when we'll roll out the Thompson candidate, but I think it'd be pretty soon. But it'll be somebody who's respected in the community and who will do a really good job for you guys. And it's a great opportunity for change. We have a great opportunity right now. So I really, encourage everyone to go to our website, listen to what we're saying, and we're taking a leadership role, and a lot of those issues that in the past have been battled between jurisdiction, and we're not taking that battle. We're taking leadership roles on those.
Okay. I look forward to finding out who the candidate is. Thank you very much again.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much again for taking the time to speak with me.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.